Oh, hey! You know, here in the United States, we're gearing up for Thanksgiving, and so begins my favorite time of the year, the holiday season. The thing that I like most about the holidays is all of the traditions that my family has, and a lot of those traditions tend to revolve around food. One such tradition is that we always have my grandmother Zofia's potato dumplings at our Thanksgiving table. Now, sadly, the last several years, my grandmother hasn't been able to make them for us, but luckily she taught me how to do it, and now I'm going to teach you. From my family to yours, these dumplings are sure to please even the pickiest eaters at your Thanksgiving table. I'm Joe the Blue Wizard, and we're making Zofia's famous potato dumplings, today on The Blue Wizard Cooks. Okay, so as per usual, we of course need to get all of our ingredients and equipment together in one place. So this way we have everything we need, where we need it, and when we need it. Let's make some magic. Geez, that's heavy. I wasn't expecting that. Well, anyway, we got a large pot of water that we do have to set to a boil for the very first step of our recipe to make these dumplings, because these will be boiled in a second. So I've got 4 quarts of water that I've placed into a large pot, and I'm just gonna set this over a high heat while we do everything else. All right, so now that we have that going, it's time for us to get our dumplings in order. And we're gonna start, of course, with potatoes, because these are potato dumplings. Now, I've gone ahead and made these in advance, and this recipe really is designed to be used with leftover mashed potatoes. But if you don't have leftover mashed potatoes, let me tell you how I made these. I peeled and diced into 1-inch pieces 3 large russet potatoes and set them in a large pot and covered them with cool water. I place them over high heat and bring them up to the boil. Once the potatoes are up to a boil, we're going to take and reduce the heat a little bit just so that they don't boil over. And then we're going to let them boil for about 15 minutes. You'll know that the potatoes are done when you can take a fork and stick them easily through the potatoes and pull them back out just as easily. We drain the potatoes and then place them back into the hot pot. Then I mashed the potatoes with my potato masher. Some people use an electric mixer for this, but I use the potato masher, go old-fashioned. You want to get out all of the lumps. After the potatoes were mashed, I measured out 4 cups of the mashed potatoes because that's how much we need for our recipe. And here they are, our 4 cups of mashed potatoes. A piece of advice that I have is that the next time that you make mashed potatoes for your family, make a little bit extra, set 4 cups of it aside, and then the next day you can have potato dumplings. So anyway, first thing that I want to do is take these potatoes and place them into a large bowl. I'm going to take and just run my fingers through them a little bit just to make sure that I got every little last lump that I possibly could have gotten with my potato masher. You absolutely do not want any lumps of potatoes in this mixture. After I've taken and run my fingers through the potatoes to make sure that there's no lumps, now I can actually add in the rest of my ingredients. Guys, watch this, it's super easy. I just need to add in 2 cups of flour, 2 eggs, those are large eggs, and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And that's it. That's all it takes to make these fantastically delicious potato dumplings. So now we're going to take and mix together all of these ingredients until we get a nice smooth dough. And I like to go in with my hands instead of using a mixer, but I know plenty of people who have used a mixer with this. My grandmother included, on occasion, has used a mixer with this, but I like the feel of going at it with my hands. But it's fun to play with your food a little bit while you're making it. Just as long as your hands are clean. I think it was Julia Child who always said that clean hands are a cook's best friend. I've certainly found that to be true. All right, there we go. I think that that's a smooth enough dough. One of the disadvantages of using your hands is that your hands tend to get a little bit icky. I'm gonna wash them before we move on to the next step. All right, so there we go. My hands are all washed nice and squeaky clean. I also have cleaned up and cleared off my work surface because we're going to be rolling out these dumplings on our counter over here. So I have my dumpling dough, and before I start to put it onto my counter, I'm just gonna put a little extra flour onto my surface to make sure that the dough does not stick. And then I can pull it off and you can see it makes a nice smooth dough, okay? It sort of holds together really nicely. I'm gonna take and divide this into 2 pieces. We'll work with 1/2 at a time. All right, and the goal here is to sort of roll your half of the dough into a log shape. You want to make it nice and thin. And if you ever feel like your dough is sticking a little bit to the counter, just add a little bit more flour. Move this bowl out of the way. My little dumpling log is getting a little long. So you want your dough log to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick. All right, and then I'm gonna take and sort of press it down flat. Okay, so you wanna get a nice flattened log, like somebody sat on the log who ate a few too many dumplings. All right, and then the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to start cutting out the dumplings. Now for this, I use a bench scraper because it's an easy tool that's not gonna wreck up my counters. But my grandmother actually used a knife in order to do this. So if that's what you wanna use and you've got good enough counters that are gonna hold up to it, then by all means, use your knife. But like I said, the bench scrape is nice for me. And if you've got a knife that's particularly dull, or if you have a sort of really, really thin spatula, you could use that too. All right, but like I said, the bench scrape is for me. And the goal that you want to get with these is you want to chop them into sort of dumpling-like shapes. So let me show you what that means. You want to cut them on the bias, so on a diagonal, okay? And you're just sort of chopping off little portions of dough. And your goal is to make a shape sort of like this, okay? And that's a nice, perfect dumpling shape. Don't make them too big or too thick, all right, because then they'll take too long to cook and they'll come out of the water and break and everything like that, which is no bueno. The first several times that I made these dumplings, I consistently made them freakishly huge. Freakishly. Like we're talking size of a human finger kind of huge, okay? And they were big. They were a little much. So don't make the same mistake that I did. And there we go. So we have our nice laid out pieces of dumpling. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take and place them onto a sheet tray just for the purposes of making them easy to move from this counter over to my stove where I'm actually going to cook them. Okay, so I'm just going to place them on here. If you're going to leave these on the counter for any extended period of time, you might want to put down a little bit of flour just to keep them from sticking. It is a dough after all. These look great. And guys, they already smell good. I know that that's weird that like raw dough smells good, but remember, these have a lot of potatoes in them and potatoes smell good. So I'm just gonna leave these off to the side while I roll out the next half. All right, so there's the last of our dumplings, and now it's time to cook them off. My water has come to a boil just in time for us to get started with the cooking. So I'm gonna take the lid off. And of course, whenever we are making something with our hot water, like pasta or dumplings or anything, we of course want to add salt because this is going to flavor our dumplings or pasta or whatever it is that we're cooking. Now that we added our salt, you can see that the water is not boiling quite as much as it was. This is because when you add salt to water, it actually raises the boiling point. So we need to make sure that this gets back up to a full boil before we start adding our dumplings. All right, so I'd say that that's boiling enough. I'm going to take and move our tray of dumplings off to the side so it's in a better position for me to add them to the pot. And I'm also going to bring in another bowl, a landing zone for these dumplings, so this way they have a place to go once they come out of the water. And one thing that I forgot to bring out, cooking spray. We're going to make sure that these dumplings do not stick when they come out of the water. So I'm going to take and spray the bowl a little bit on the bottom with cooking spray. And we're gonna leave that out because it's going to be used again. All right, so our dumpling water is boiling, and so now we're going to take and add in the dumplings, just one at a time, into the water. You want to add just enough dumplings so that you barely cover the bottom of the pot. And you'll notice that as you add them, they sink right to the bottom. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen. But we don't want them to stay at the bottom. We don't want them to stick there. So I'm going to take and use my cool little strainer spoon to sort of swirl the water around a bit, just to make sure that the dumplings are not stuck to the bottom. All right, and then we're gonna let these go and boil until the dumplings rise to the top, and we're gonna let them sit for about a minute, minute and a half after they've risen to the top of the pot, and then we'll pull them out. Oh, we've got some dumplings that are rising to the top. Yay! All right, so once again, once those have all risen to the top, we're gonna let that sit for a minute to a minute and a half until the dumplings are nice and cooked through. So it's a little over a minute now since all of our dumplings rose to the top, so I'm gonna take my little strainer spoon and scoop them out of the water and place them into the bowl that I have sprayed with the cooking spray. They're gonna sit there for a little bit while I work on the next batches. And to prevent them all from sticking to each other, again, another spray of cooking spray. All right, just to make sure that the next batches that go through don't stick. And I'm gonna cook off the rest of these. So while I'm waiting for the next drop of dumplings to rise to the top of the pot, I just want to take this time to remind you that if you enjoyed this video and you want to see me make more like it, to make sure to let me know by hitting the like button down below. And if you want to see more of my content and get notified every time that I post a new video, you might want to hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell for notifications. So this way you get a notification in your email every time that I post a new video. Hey, guess what? It's free. If you make any of my recipes, I'd love to hear about it. Make sure that you tag me on either Instagram or Twitter at the handle @JoeTheBlueWhiz. If you'd like to find this recipe or any of my other recipes, make sure to hit the link in the description below, or just head straight to BlueWizardFood.com. And finally, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos, please drop me a comment down below. I'm pretty good about responding to all of the comments, and I love getting to interact with you guys that way. Oh, I see that my next batch of dumplings is ready to come out. All right, so all of our dumplings have been boiled off, and they're perfectly good to eat right now if you want to, but they're not quite up to my grandmother's standards. We're gonna take these up another notch. Yes, kids, we're gonna add butter and breadcrumbs and make them out of this world. Out of this world. Now, this is not something that my family has ever really measured before. It's something you do kind of by eye, but I'm gonna measure it for you guys, okay, today. So I'm gonna put over a nice medium heat, a small little frying pan, and then I'm gonna add 6 tablespoons of butter. There it is, butter. While that butter melts, I'm gonna talk about the breadcrumbs that I use. I have started using panko breadcrumbs instead of the regular breadcrumbs that you can get at the grocery store, although you can get these at the grocery store too, but you guys know the ones that I'm talking about, the ones that are kind of like sand. Now, you can use the regular breadcrumbs, and that's what my grandmother actually uses, but we started in my family using the panko breadcrumbs instead because my uncle, as it turns out, is allergic to soy. And panko breadcrumbs, for whatever reason, they don't have any soy in them. And so we started using them instead, and they work perfectly. So I'm just gonna keep swirling the butter until it completely melts. You wanna keep it moving or else it'll start to burn in spots. And I've actually taken and lowered the temperature down just a little bit more, just for a little extra protection. Can't hurt to be too safe. All right, there's my butter melted. Now I'm gonna start adding in the breadcrumbs. The goal is that you wanna add enough breadcrumbs. Oops. See, we're starting to sputter and spurt already. You want to add enough breadcrumbs so that it still is a little saucy, but it's still mostly breadcrumbs. 4, 5, 6. Is that going to be perfect? I think that it's close. I'm going to add a 7th. Give it a swirl. That's it, kids. So it was 7 tablespoons of panko breadcrumbs and 6 tablespoons of butter was the perfect ratio. All right, you want to give them a nice little toast until the breadcrumbs start to brown just a little bit. And these are whole wheat breadcrumbs, so they start off a little bit brown, but they'll get a little more. All right, I'd say that's good enough. All right, so now we get to add them into our dumplings. So I'm just gonna take and use a spatula to scrape the butter and breadcrumbs mixture over top of the dumplings. Yummy. Get every drop of that butter. All right, now the way to coat these that my grandmother showed me is a little unorthodox. You don't use a spoon because you might break the dumplings. Instead, you toss them. That's why I have them in this really big bowl. So you just sort of give it a little zhuzh and toss the breadcrumbs over the dumplings. Oh, they look so fantastic and they smell, oh, so good. Now tell me that those don't look absolutely fantastic. Now my favorite part of this show, tasting. Guys. Guys, Grandma's got game. She knows what she's doing. These dumplings are out of this world! They're like little potatoey pillows of delightful, delicious goodness. Well, kids, that's all that we have time for here today on The Blue Wizard Cooks. Remember, you don't have to be a professional chef or even a wizard in order to make magic in the kitchen. And I'm gonna go finish these. Bye now.